Hello and welcome to the SFB 768, Managing Cycles and Innovation Processes. Today I'd like to talk about the sub-project A8, Managing Cycles and Teams and Networks, about how we diagnose, intervene and evaluate innovation processes. My name is Felix Brodbeck and I'm presenting the results and what we have done in this particular sub-project as part of SFB 768. When we think about innovation, it's good to define it first. Now, what is innovation? Innovation is something new, new ideas, new methods, new devices, and innovation is always done in two different kinds of activities. One is exploration, that is generating ideas, playful trying out, trial and error, seeking new ways, sometimes under pressure, sometimes due to necessity, but sometimes also just for playfulness, just for fun. Exploitation is the other side of the medal, meaning that you implement something that has been new or is perceived to be new, and you now try to find out whether it's working, whether it's implementable, and whether it pays the bills, and whether you can actually also further innovate and further explore by exploiting what you have explored already and putting it into practice. Now, when we think of innovation as a human activity of individuals, groups, and whole organizations, we can actually further qualify exploration and exploitation by looking at the now. Now, what's happening now, what has happened in the past, and what will happen in the future. And look at the action or the activity of what people do when they explore and when they exploit. When they explore, they basically learn trial and error or systematically or by consequence, by insight, whatever, and they learn on the basis of past experience. When they look into the future, they need to adjust their behavior to some extent. They need to adapt, and this they do by learning, by changing behavior, changing thinking, changing even goals, so they can actually adapt to conditions that might change in the future, so that they can newly adapt to those conditions. When we look at the exploitation side, it is about reflection. You reflect the past, what has worked, how well did it nurture us, how did it extend our resources, did it help, how helpful was it, and then anticipate the future by asking questions and also emitting respective behavior, that you anticipate future events and are prepared for what's happening in the future. And this is part of exploitation behavior. There are two different behavioral, let's say, shapes, or they have two different motives with them, and different goals are achieved by these types of actions, and they do not go together all too well. They are not the same. They are actually pretty opposite. The one is more playful, the other one is more goal-oriented and clearly efficiency-oriented. Good. Well, what should you do then? And this is the approach of CyCles. You alternate those behaviors in certain rhythmic structures called CyCles. This is the new concept that has been introduced by the SFB 768 not only into work and organizational psychology areas, but also in many, many other areas of engineering, software engineering, development, economy, business science, etc. We are using the cyclic action concept here to look at what people do, what do they do at work, in their teams, in leader-follower relationships, and in overall organizations. So we ask the question, how are innovation cycles managed by humans? How do they do it? And we look at particular facets of this process. The one is the social structure, which can be characterized by looking at leadership or leader-follower relationships, by looking at teamworks and also multi-team systems and networked teams in organizations. The next is cognitive structures. What do people think? What motivates them? What goals do they anticipate? And here in particular, we look at shared mental models. And third, we look at technical structures. This is what people have invented. Certain technologies, norms are already technology, but also devices, technical equipment, things that structure the work process and the organization. And we look at it from a work and organizational psychology viewpoint. Now, what have we done so far, and what is our approach for the future? What we've done so far is we have developed a model about the managing of innovation cycle in teams and organizations. And it comprises all the elements that I've just introduced by looking at how people do things around here. And when you look at how we do things around here, and you ask people, how do you do things around here? And is that good? Is that not so good? Should it be changed? You're actually asking about their culture. And this is what we're measuring. We're measuring culture in teams, projects, multi-team systems, and whole organizations. And the model on the basis of which we look at those various cultural elements is a model that actually incorporates context conditions, which might be cyclic, and the conditions of the work systems and how people think about it and how people report us how they do things, which is about anticipation, adaptation, and standardization. You have just learned those concepts previously. And we look at shared cognitions, shared goals, shared motives, and emotions, and try on that basis to predict the effectiveness of the innovation process and how well innovations are actually performed. How do we do that? The model alone doesn't really help that much. We need to measure according to the model and see whether out there in teams, projects, whole organizations, the facets and the characteristics of innovation culture are actually in place, or to what extent they are in place and to what extent they are improvable. So we measure and diagnose work systems, larger work systems even. Then we help them. We come up with interventions. For instance, one intervention is how to actually create more shared cognition. So from a group of members who think about how they do things and what they should do very differently, how can we help them to become a group that where the members actually think more in accordance to each other, where they are more aligned? And that is one of the interventions that we are suggesting. And then we look at real existing working systems which innovate, which come up with innovations, and we look at them over time. And some of them we support with our intervention tools and others we don't, so-called control group. And then we look at time two, we look how well are they doing, how well is their innovation process running, and how strongly does it relate to the concepts that we have measured in terms of innovation culture. Our prediction is that when anticipation, adaptation, and standardization is well, and when shared cognitions are focused and aligned, we would predict that innovation projects do perform better than in projects where these elements are not fully in place. Based on that, we intend then to improve our model and our intervention tools and support effective management of innovation cycles in teams and organizations. Thank you very much.